At this point, Fallout 4 on PlayStation is much worse than simply unstable. It's much worse than a little buggy. For a growing number of players, Fallout 4 is actively losing paid content, and that's the moment where this stops being about frustration and it becomes way more serious. Because bugs can be tolerated, crashes can sometimes be worked around, even bad updates can eventually be forgiven. But when content people paid for simply disappears, stops registering, or breaks saves to the point where they can't even load anymore, that's crossing a line. The comments and complaints from players make it very clear. Over and over again, PlayStation players are saying the same thing in different ways. Their DLC is missing. Their Season Pass content no longer registers. Their saves are corrupted because the game suddenly doesn't recognize DLC areas anymore. And in some cases, Fallout 4 won't even boot past the loading screen. And why is all of this happening? Because the game updated. That's all it took. Let's be very clear about what's happening here. These aren't optional mods. This isn't experimental content. This isn't third-party add-ons. This is official Bethesda DLC sold to players for real money, still listed on the PlayStation Store, still advertised as part of the game, and suddenly unavailable or unusable for a portion of the player base. That is the line. If you bought Fallout 4 10 years ago, bought the Season Pass, bought Far Harbor, Nuka World, Automatron, and Workshop DLCs, those purchases didn't come with an expiration date. They weren't rentals. They weren't temporary licenses tied to the goodwill of future patches. You paid for permanent access to content inside a single-player game. And now, after mandatory updates, some players are being told by the game itself that those purchases simply don't exist anymore. Let me try to give you an analogy. Imagine you buy a car, and after a few years, the car dealership that sold you the car comes and tells you you can't drive it anymore and takes away your keys. That's what's happening here. What makes this worse is how random and uncontrollable it feels. Some PlayStation players report that their DLC is installed but not recognized. Others say the DLC tab shows everything as uninstalled even though the console confirms it's downloaded. Some can load old saves but can't start a new game. Others lose entire characters because they were standing inside a DLC location when the game stopped recognizing the DLC. Imagine loading a save and being told the area you're standing in no longer exists. That's a hard stop. It's not just a minor issue. And here's where PlayStation players are uniquely stuck. On PC, people can roll back versions. They can lock updates. They can install legacy builds. Some players have moved to GOG specifically because it allows them to keep a stable version of Fallout 4 forever. On PlayStation, none of that exists. You can turn off auto updates and still get updated. You can uninstall and reinstall and still get the same broken version. You can delete saves and lose years of progress just to make the game boot again. There is no rollback button. There is no opt-out. There is no stable legacy version. If Bethesda breaks Fallout 4 on PlayStation, you are forced to live with it. That's why this feels different to console players. It's not just that the game is broken, it's that they have no way to protect what they already bought.
Guys, really quick, I'm trying to make it as a full-time YouTuber, and if you enjoy the content, please consider subscribing. It truly means a lot and it makes a big difference. Okay, back to the video.
Now let's talk about the free content argument, because it keeps coming up. Some people say Bethesda gave free content. They added new weapons, they added creations, they added updates. That argument collapses the moment paid content stops working. Let me say everything that free content doesn't do. Free content does not compensate for broken paid content. Free content does not replace DLC that no longer loads. Free content does not fix corrupted saves. Free content does not excuse content being removed after purchase. And on PlayStation, the situation is even worse, because much of that free content isn't even available. Players keep pointing out that certain creations, like Tales of the Beast Hunter or the Varmint Rifle, simply do not appear on PlayStation at all. Others say the creations menu crashes before they can even browse it. Some can't log into creations in the first place. So, PlayStation players are being told implicitly that they should accept broken paid DLC in exchange for free content they often can't access anyway. That's an insult. Most players are slowly but steadily moving from anger and frustration to resignation. There's less and less people saying, I hope they fix this. They're saying, I uninstalled. They're saying, I'm done forever. They're saying, this company lost me. That's broken trust. And once trust breaks, it doesn't come back with a hotfix or a free rifle, even if you could access it, which many can't. There are players who love settlement building. I personally never did, but hey, everyone has different likes and dislikes. There are players who spent hundreds of hours in Fallout 4, players who were perfectly happy before these updates. Now they can't play at all. Some had to delete every save they've had since launch just to make the game load again. Others lost characters because DLC quests vanished mid-playthrough. Some report NPCs becoming unusable, quests freezing, VATs breaking, melee perks malfunctioning, or entire mechanics failing. And again, this is happening without mods in many cases, which destroys the common excuse that this is a mod user problem. If a vanilla game with official DLC crashes, deletes content, or corrupts saves after a forced update, the responsibility lies entirely with the developer. There's also a disturbing pattern people are noticing. Fallout 4 was relatively stable before the next-gen update. I do say relatively stable, because it still had the trademark Bethesda jank, but it was working fine enough. Then the update arrived and things got worse. Then more patches came and things didn't improve. Then the Anniversary Edition dropped, and suddenly, paid content started disappearing. At no point was there a clear warning that updating could remove DLC access. At no point were players given the choice to stay on a stable version. At no point was there a rollback option for PlayStation users. And yet the DLC remains on sale. The point is that players feel like something was taken from them after purchase. When that perception becomes widespread, a company has a serious problem. Some people push back and say, it works fine for me. That doesn't disprove anything. If a plane crashes and 5% of the passengers survive, it doesn't mean the airline company shouldn't be held responsible. The issue is still very real. The comments clearly show that Fallout 4 on PlayStation is in an inconsistent, unpredictable state. Some players get lucky, others lose everything. A single-player game should not feel like a gamble. And there's something else that I want to mention. All of this was so extremely avoidable. Bethesda didn't need to force these updates. They didn't need to merge creations into the base game. They didn't need to alter how DLC is recognized on PlayStation without airtight testing. And if something went wrong, they could have paused updates, rolled things back, or disabled systems until stability returned. Instead, PlayStation players were pushed forward with no escape hatch. That's why this feels like a breaking point. This is about one basic expectation that hasn't changed since the beginning of gaming. If you sell content, the buyer should be able to access it. That's it. Not endless updates, not miracles. Just access to what was purchased. Right now, Fallout 4 on PlayStation is failing that test for too many players to ignore, and the longer this goes on, the more permanent the damage becomes. Bethesda's reputation wasn't the best even before this Fallout 4 fiasco, but this is making it so much worse because people remember this stuff. They remember losing saves and DLCs that they paid for, just like any other product. They remember being told to wait while nothing changes. They remember being sold content that stopped working. And once players decide they can't trust you with single-player games, that trust doesn't come back easily. For many PlayStation players, Fallout 4 is simply gone. Like, gone. Totally. Not buggy, not janky, gone. And it's a product they paid for with real money. That is the line that should never have been crossed.